Well, release the Kraken.
Okay, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. We are back with another Unleashing the Kraken. As per usual, I'm going to stop saying this over the next few days, but Camden and myself are trying to do this as collectively and together as often as possible. With that being said, holy shit, I have no other way to describe this other than what's been going on with recent global affairs, if you will. But anyways, Camden, let's start it off.
Yeah. Today, these Pandora Papers are kind of a lot. A good way to start it off, my instincts tells me behind the release of these papers, there's involvement of the intelligence agencies of the U.S. and the West. They're creating new tools for their political intervention in developing companies. You may not have heard of the Pandora Papers yet. It is a fresh leak. There's 14 offshore service providers tied to more than 330 public officials, 35 world leaders, to offshore fortunes. These people are hiding the hell out of money.
Yeah, and just very quickly, if I can add too, it's not just major heads of states. We're also talking people at a more local level, at least here relative to where I live in Canada. It's come out recently in the Toronto Star, which is a very big newspaper publication for the city of Toronto, that there were certain politicians, Canadian politicians at even a local level, that helped in some way or another orchestrate the organization of some of these Pandora Papers, some of the hidden finances that the Pandora Papers have revealed. If we see here, and I quote, who was behind it, if we just scroll up a little bit, according to Al Jazeera, the ICIG, a network of reporters and media organizations, launched a 2-year effort to sift through 11.9, basically 12 million confidential files leaked to it, aided in that effort by more than 600 journalists from 150 media outlets, end quote. Now, here's the thing.
You may be asking yourself, right? Leaked to it, who did that? It wasn't a Freedom of Information Act. I've seen speculation. A lot of you probably have seen leaks of supposed McAfee dead man switch leaks. I have seen speculation. Internet loves to do its connections, however it confirmation biases them. But I have seen people make good sense that McAfee leaked this even 2 years ago to the ICIJ.
Right. And this would be the front story or the cover story of how it was verified. And of course, I'm sure journalists did do some work on it. Don't get me wrong. Not to say that every apparatus of global mainstream media outlets are all in a big conspiracy. It would be very difficult to hide those things, which is why we have certain revelations such as this. Now, with that being said, though, when you look at certain institutes, again, to play devil's advocate, such as the Washington Post having a $600 million contract with the CIA, which is, by the way, triple. It's a contract that's worth triple than what the Post itself is worth, which is around, I think, 200 million, give or take.
And when you look at a lot of map, the U.S. is not mentioned. Oh, really? That's crazy. We don't have any offshore accounts in the United States or Canada.
Yeah,
wow.
that's quite interesting as well. Similar to like the Panama Papers of a handful of years ago,
right,
with respects to, again, that seemed to get some more elites in the UK and what have you. But what I find interesting is, again, not saying that there isn't any association there, but in those 12 million documents, but at the forefront of things, there does not seem to be British, American, again, the ones that are Israeli, the ones that are conveniently allied with the Five Eyes, if you want to call it, are sort of dilly-dallying around it. Like I said, you might find their names pop up in these papers amongst the 12 million documents, but you're not going to see anything that ties them to direct any type of incrimination.
Right. Case in point here, South Dakota is a U.S. state has the largest amount of trusts, shell companies, what you would call offshore accounts, those kinds of things. But they're located in South Dakota, it says here. The files show emerged as a U.S. state with the largest number of trusts, a financial mechanism often used to avoid or greatly reduce taxation, because it does have the tax codes that benefit these kind of operations. It's just, I mean, it was never in doubt, but now we have proof that these are how they run things.
Exactly. The next thing is that according to BBC, Frances Hogan, Facebook whistleblower, reveals her identity. So if we scroll down a little bit, this is quite peculiar, if you want to call it. So, and you'll see some of the extrapolations we'll make here. But, and I quote, a former Facebook whistleblower responsible for a series of bombshell leaks has revealed her identity. Frances Hogan, 37, who worked as a product manager on the civic integrity team at Facebook, was interviewed on Sunday by CBS. She said the documents she leaked proved that Facebook repeatedly prioritized growth over safety. Facebook said the leaks were misleading and glossed over positive research conducted by the company. In the interview on CBS's 60 Minutes program, Ms. Haugen said she had left Facebook earlier this year after becoming exasperated with the company, Before departing, she copied a series of internal memos and documents, end quote. Now, again, some people are referring to them as the Facebook files, whatever you want to call it. Now, with that being said, quite ironic given what's occurred as of today at the moment we're recording this. Right. Facebook, Instagram,
and WhatsApp all go down in a major outage. These are the three biggest apps by volume in the world. Everyone isn't worried about the Facebook whistleblower revealing identity. She's popping back up in news stories and news cycle because they can't even access how they get the news now.
Right.
They're worried about the fact that their app won't work, not who was telling them why their app is bad.
Exactly. 100%. Exactly. And I quote, you see here, visitors to the Facebook website simply saw an error page or a message that their browser could not connect. The WhatsApp and Instagram apps continued to work, but did not show new content, including any messages sent or received during the problems. Now, end quote, interestingly enough, if you go on at least on my end, I tried going on Instagram and WhatsApp. WhatsApp it still loads up your chats, but obviously nothing new incoming. You can't send anything outgoing. Instagram, it's just a blank screen saying could not load. Now, as it pertains to the timing of the 60 Minutes leaks, 60 Minutes interview regarding the leaks, it's interesting to see that. And the reason why I say this is because, again, not saying that these guys are unhackable, but to propose. Again, if we're going to look at some of the different speculations, to propose that Facebook got hit, number one, these are the guys that usually do consulting for government agencies and hire, aside from the NSA and the CIA, hire hackers to work for them to resolve these issues. Again, not saying they're perfect. With that being said, this also goes to show what happens when one company owns a bunch of shit that everybody uses. Basically,
I mean, it's a digital monopoly now. And it's all too convenient for them. So even if full conspiracy of it would be that they caused this outage, right? That they just flipped the switch on their servers
in order to adjust the algorithms.
You could take the route that they wanted to let it happen. They happened to know that someone was going to try, and so they didn't stop them. Those kinds of things, right? It doesn't. So it just is convenient, is all we're saying here.
Yeah, absolutely. The next thing is that according to RT, dozens of environmental activists block Shell's oil refinery in Netherlands in protest over greenwashing ads. Now, if we scroll down a little bit, it says here, over 80 activists from a dozen European Union states have blocked entry to Shell's oil refinery in Rotterdam, the Netherlands, to protest against the giant's greenwashing advertisements and call for a new law that bans fossil fuel ads. And I quote, fossil fuel companies, car companies, and airlines have refused to change their polluting business, but use ads and sponsorships to present themselves as the solution to the climate crisis they caused. I couldn't agree more. We're asking the public to make their voices heard and demand a European Union ban on fossil fuel ads, end quote. I'm for this personally because I think this takes us, again, you call this a farce, a long stretch, a long haul, whatever you want to call it. I think this takes us one step closer to a form of 0 point energy. I know some of you are probably laughing as you're listening to that, but again, you might be saying, Dave, your hope is too far out. Well, look, I mean, I got to be honest, aside from
one step at a time.
Right. One step at a time. Exactly. And
the client, the whole power before we can. Yeah.
Right. Yes, exactly. And also at the same time, I like to make it clear that just because I agree in this regard with what the people are doing, it does not mean that I fully agree with the whole aspect of climate change being a legitimate thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think the observation here is that they are calling an end to the hypocrisy of these companies. They make things like you need to use paper straws, not plastic, but they're the ones ruining the environment. You recycling your sodas is never going to impact anything positively as much as they make detriments to it.
I couldn't agree
those
more.
kinds of things is what I can absolutely agree with.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
The next thing is, let's see here. According to independent.co.uk, a quantum computer breakthrough as scientists show vital behavior for first time. Scientists have demonstrated a new behavior vital for the creation of quantum computers that marks a major breakthrough. Now, very quick little side note. Quantum computing, again, sort of going with the agenda of how, 10 years ago it was purely theoretical and things like that. A lot of people don't know this. Jeffrey Epstein was actually one of the main funders. I know this because I've been given permission to say one of the main funders for quantum computing at the time, which was interesting because again, it was sort of like a niche type of thing. You started talking anti-gravity, quantum computing. Scientists or physicists would say, "Okay, what cartoon or what comic book are you reading?" Now all of a sudden, it's legit. Again, going back to that whole thing of that quote from Colonel Philip Corso, they got to give up some secrets to hide the rest of it, and then replace it somewhere else. We see here, and I quote, "For the first time, researchers were able to show in an experiment that a variety of quantum computing pieces taken together were more accurate than the sum of their parts. Such behavior will be necessary if quantum computers are ever relied on for practical purposes. Scientists suggest that the technology could one day change the world by allowing us to do calculations more quickly than ever thought possible. But fundamental work like this must first be conducted to ensure those calculations are trustworthy," end quote. I see this as a pure form of drop feeding. Again, on the surface level, it's great evolution and all that, but this is, if you ask me, this is stuff that they completed in an afternoon back in the 50s in one of these underground bases. But that's just me. I don't know.
And the entire caveat of all of it is that every single time they talk about quantum computing, they ignore and rule out electromagnetism of it. It is a pseudoscience of quantum computing, and but here we have quantum computing is very practical. So they're just trying to get us used to qubits and things like that first before they really shatter our world.
Right, because then it's gonna all it's gonna take is another article a year or two from now. Scientists have suddenly found, and I love how they use that term. So they say that we use vague terms. What about them?
They accidentally did it.
Right, scientists have just found there's an electromagnetic connection. Okay, give me a break. But anyways, you want to take the next one?
Yeah, China. Boy, this snowball is gaining some speed. They have 38 yesterday, 39 today, I believe. They have 56 warplanes in Taiwanese airspace. The largest show of force on record, continuing the 3 days of sustained military harassment against the self-ruled island. China flew 56 fighter planes toward Taiwan on Monday, and the largest show of force on record, continuing as they've done all throughout the weekend. They just did their air show, and then I guess they didn't even land the planes, and they just kept on going to Taiwan. Will this escalate into something else?
It's in my opinion, it's such a delicate situation because, again, it's all about a multi-layered chess game between heads of state, between what's going on covertly, secretly, again, not even involving the extraterrestrial angle of things. But if we take a look, for example, if I'm not mistaken, President Xi Jinping was in New York for the UN General Assembly just a week or two ago. It's interesting to see these guys still visit each other. They shake hands publicly. Meanwhile, there's a kinetic warfare sort of ramping up. Now, from my personal opinion, looking at things externally, really with a bird's eye point of view, that I think a lot of you like to hear, both my and Camden's opinion. Yeah. I think this is a ramping up of kinetic warfare with China is almost imminent in the sense of, again, maybe not a world war, if you will, but a form of mass consciousness distraction similar to that of 9/11 relative to trying to divide people again and create the problem, create the solution. The only people that are going to suffer here are the innocents, the soldiers serving.
Absolutely. The Taiwanese people that have no involvement in this. This is a dick swinging contest between really the United States and China, and Taiwanese people are caught in the middle, and that's the most unfair part because do you think, here's a question, just a topic question, do you think mutually assured destruction is still their means to not go to war, or do they even admit now that nukes not really, no one's going to shoot nukes off, so we might as well just go to war? Do you think Cold War
I think
or hot war?
I believe my personal opinion, I believe all heads of state of nations, it's unfortunate for me to say because
Yeah.
they should all matter, but the ones more so that matter more than others, they have an understanding that there's no point of dropping a nuke. And I believe this is where the ET angle comes in, because they're gonna deactivate it before we
Right.
can
Yeah.
even
Yeah. Yeah.
launch it. In
Yeah.
addition to
Absolutely.
that, I do believe that certain extraterrestrials have agreed to not get involved in the internal affairs. So a
Mm.
kinetic warfare would be okay. Not okay, but it would be something that they don't step in on.
Right,
I
because
do believe there's a limit, though.
it's not
Yeah,
messing, it's not ripping time and space, it's
right,
just
right. I do
blowing it to
believe.
hell.
Right, exactly, exactly.
Russia, speaking of blowing it to hell, they have tested and fired a submarine launched hypersonic missile today. Everyone's doing hypersonic missiles now on the kinetic warfare, like you just said. It seems like this is not their mutually assured destruction, but their mutually assured action now, right? We had North Korea, we've had the United States last couple months, Russia, China's done one in its air show. So like it seems
Well,
that's
you
what all the
see,
cool kids are doing.
right, exactly. And to add to that as well, too, if we take a look at history, the alleged meetings of, Kennedy meeting with Castro at many times during the Cold War, we see, George H.W. Bush meeting with, I believe it was certain Iranian officials during the Jimmy Carter administration when that whole hostage situation in Iran happened. Again, like I said, the people that are, I do believe firmly that the generals of each respected nation, if there were to be a war between, say, the West and China in the South China Sea or Taiwan, things like that, a proxy war, I do believe that it's not some grand conspiracy. I think those at the top, though, limited to a number of people that I could probably count on my hand,
Right.
would know what's really going on. And we've seen this happen before. I mean, Kennedy meeting with Castro, again, unconfirmed, but I mean, you look at the documents and it's like, okay, like the archives and things like that.
Yeah.
Why would this not be the case here? Why
I
would
mean,
yeah.
you're correct. The thing is you have to ask yourself a second question, because these hypersonic missiles that everyone is now making their benefit, as it says here, saying they could hit almost any point in the world and evade a U.S. built missile shield. We're talking Iron Dome. Then we're talking the United States' ICBMs. So like, is there also a defense system that all these countries are working on with their hypersonic missiles that they're not telling? You know what I mean? Like they wouldn't make it and then not figure out how to beat it.
Well, right, exactly. The first thing that comes to mind when I see any article pertaining to a country showed off its weapons is like, okay, how much of this do they think we're jokers? Because I mean, when you look at it, you're talking about, again, not to be that guy, but you're talking about IBM ballistic missiles, things like this, hypersonic Zircon missile and all that. Yeah, and what about all they got to do is throw up an anti-gravity field around their whole country? Yeah, and which I think
there's 3 videos I know of off the top of my head where it just blah 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 gone.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So again, how much of this is a show in a lot of ways, right?
Right.
The next thing is that according to Disclosed TV, in addition to a number of other outlets, files of the Nuremberg Trials have been published online, which is quite peculiar. If we scroll down, we'll see here, on the 75th anniversary of the Nuremberg trial of the major war criminals of World War II, Stanford University digitized the historical files of this trial and made them publicly available online. I find this interesting. I mean, I wonder...
Did you know that Stanford had those articles?
I didn't. Yeah.
Right.
See,
I would not have
right.
ever guessed that.
I mean, again, when we take a look at a lot of what goes on in these universities, whether it's, a very recently more modern day example, Anthony Blinken taking money from CCP backed groups within Stanford University, things like that. There's so many intelligence angles at play here. I was quite surprised to see this come at a time that it did, simply because, again, there's got to be more to it simply than without it seeming like confirmation bias. There's got to be more to it than them just saying, hey, let's put it up now, of all times. I mean, and then we have to speculate. Are these just the ones that they're giving to the public? Again, this is the other thing as well. We have to think of all angles here.
They say that it took 20 years to digitize all 5,000 of these files. So in their justification, well, this is when they got done.
Right.
To me, my speculative view, the same reason Pentagon started talking about releasing more 9/11 documents, like we know that you at least were complicit in what happened. And
right.
So like in the end, you're just trying to get lack of a better way to say it, people like me and Dave, content creators that will get on these type of things to just shift their talking points for a while. You know?
Yep.
So that's how I see it.
It could, very good point. A potential, maybe not intelligence operation, but a general apparatus of realizing, okay, these, independent individuals, content creators are gaining traction. So let's put these stories out so they cover it, and at least we can still somewhat curate the narrative, right?
I mean, hey, we did cover it, so good on them, but...
Right, yeah, exactly. Technically, yeah, you found guilty there. But the next thing is that according to angelusnews.com and many others too, a new report is to show more than 3,000 pedophiles have been involved in the Catholic French Church since the 1950s. If we scroll down here, more than 3,000 pedophiles have operated within the Catholic Church in France. An official investigation found. Speaking 2 days before the publication of a report into clerical sex abuse in the French church, Jean-Marc Sauvé, the head of the investigating commission, said the inquiry found evidence of between 2,900 and 3,200 abusers. That is a minimal estimate, he told the French news agency, Agence France Presse, hopefully I didn't butcher that, without clarifying whether all of the alleged abusers were clergy. And I quote, "At the end of this considerable work, one cannot claim to have had the whole truth. We are only at the threshold. Other work will have to deepen knowledge on child crime, but we have enough proven facts to speak confidently and legitimately," end quote. Again, folks, I don't know where to start on this. I mean, my God, the things wrong with this. We could tie this in. Sorry, very quickly, we could tie this into the larger apparatuses of the secret space program. We could tie this into human trafficking, I mean, my God, this goes into almost every direction. It's not even. It's ridiculous.
I mean, the Vatican, point blank, this is the Catholic Church. They've started to say, whether or not there's aliens out there, we'll still missionary to them. They've also. These Pandora Papers are showing the corruption on just a political level that the Vatican's still very tied to in all of those countries. There seems to be a large interconnected network of this kind of thing, and a word Chrome and QAnon aside, it's really fucking shitty that this happens. Period. Much less what they may or may not be doing else.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Speaking of French, Algeria bans French military from airspace in Colonial Row. Algeria is a colony of France. Traditionally, it is now not. Algeria has banned French military planes from its airspace in a deepening dispute with the former colonial power after President Macron accused its ruling class of fueling hatred of France.
Sorry, if I could say quickly, this isn't the first time between the retired military generals, colonels, you name it, but lieutenants, between the people calling for more traditional cultural aspects to be returned to the country of France. Like I said, it's not to me at least, it's not about being racist or anything like this. If there are people within a respective nation of a certain part of the world that overwhelmingly between the citizens, the ex-military, and in this case Algeria, again, and I'm sure this is just what we know about, by the way. Right. If there are people that want French, that don't really care so much about the ethnic, religious backgrounds of people, but just want the traditional culture of the French nation, right, to remain. Look, again, what the people want is what the people want. I'm not saying this is representative of everybody, but I mean, my God, there's quite a vast amount.
He would be pandering in this statement, Macron would, because he's gotten a lot of backlash recently. So
right.
To say to Algeria's ruling class, you're fueling hatred of France, he's trying. That's the only thing I can say that he's doing, right?
Right. I couldn't agree more. I mean, when you take a look at, again, people not being happy with him and his phone being the target of yes, and his phone being the target of some of the Project Pegasus software. Look, again, if the people are calling for this and he's still going against it due to the, I guess you could say, New World Order, Great Reset, globalistic agenda, it's going to cause divide.
Right. I mean, and Macron also suggests that the country's leaders have rewritten history to blame all its current woes on Paris and colonization. I kind of don't think that's rewriting history, because imperialism kind of fucked Africa. It could have been one of the most wealthy, mineral-rich continents, period, and it kind of got fucked by Europe.
He's also, I mean, ironically enough, he's one, not not to say I should be the judge of this, but he's one to talk, you know?
Right. I know.
Like,
Right. Yeah.
like, so.
Absolutely. NPR, a big job for a small government agency, enforcing vaccine mandates for 80 million workers. You would think maybe this would be the Department of Health Services or I don't know. Well, it's not. It's OSHA. In early September, just before Joe Biden ordered 80 million workers to get vaccinated and undergo regular testing, or not and. A question went viral on the internet. Would y'all report unvaccinated coworkers for 200K? There is some proposition that you will be incentivized to rat to I don't want rat is maybe a bad word, but that's what it is, but just to inform your employer that you feel unsafe by someone being unvaccinated.
Right.
And so the replies admittedly were pretty funny, but like, this is dangerous, and we have to be so careful that they are not systematically turning us on each other on purpose. It's very, very shocking to see.
Yeah, right. The concept of division, the concept of being able to so divide at whim by these by these governments is clearly evident in this regard. One all it takes is one question. Would you sell them out for two? And here's the thing. This
it was funny. Don't get me wrong. Would you sell them out for 200K? You don't even need that K behind it. Like,
right. Someone said, yeah, you don't even have to put a K behind the 200. Someone goes, nah, I'd report him for free. Others would say I'd report for a basket of Shake Shack fries. Right. And what I find so ironic about all of this too is that, again, it just goes to show you how one question could simply divide people relative to what's, we can argue very strongly, is being coerced onto us, right? And it just goes to show you how governments have, I don't say this in a good way, how they've sat back the past decade or so with respects to this, and now all of a sudden they're realizing all it takes is one post on the internet and people go nuts, right?
They have socially conditioned very well. I can't say that about them.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
And the next thing, Dave, I'll let you take it.
Sure, thank you. The next thing is that there's an increase in, it's been saying, a study.
Springer Link. This is like a researched scientific article. Yeah.
A study from Springer Link, link.springer.com, has stated that an increase in COVID-19 cases are unrelated to levels of vaccination across 68 countries and 2,947 counties in the United States. Interestingly enough, if I were to paraphrase, I will say, this study found there's no discernible association between those getting vaccinated and those catching it, in the sense that, again, if we take a look at some of the people that are the populations that are fully vaccinated, they're catching it over and over. And the only method, at least from a propagandistic standpoint, is for these heads of state to say, well, it's the unvaccinated. I don't. This is, again, when celebrities speak out about this, NBA players, you name it, I guess rappers, artists, all that.
Yeah.
I mean, why can't, the thing is it's not about denying the vaccine. What scares me is that a conversation cannot even be had about the opposing perspective without getting censored. Right.
I mean, and not even listen to what your perspective was, just made sure you don't talk about it.
Right.
There in fact was no discernible difference, but there was in slightly a more positive association with the higher places to re-catching and catching and catching and catching. So you wonder what the truth is all I'll say.
Exactly.
Sudan warns medicine fuel wheat running out amid port blockade. Algeria, same way. Africa has gotten fucked. They are left to waste time and time again. Major disruption of crucial supplies comes as protesting Beja tribe from eastern Sudan blocks roads and forces Port Sudan to close. Kind of cool, I guess. Sudan's government warned the country is running out of life-saving medicines, fuel, and wheat stocks because of the closure of its main port in ongoing protests. The thing is, were these people protesting closing the port? Do they need and weren't getting those life-saving medicines, that fuel, that wheat? You know what I mean? Like, is there a reason that why have they taken over the port? It's not because they're like ruthless criminals, you know?
Right, exactly. And to very quickly to add to that too, again, when I see this, again, all I see is, very sadly, I see innocent people suffering the most. I see the perfect agenda of create division, create the problem, create the solution, control both ends of the stick, metaphorically, or literally for that matter. And I just see, to be honest with you, the first thing that came to mind when I saw this article was just a interdimensional parasitic entity. If you guys want my opinion, just be very reaping in joy, seeing all the things happening around the world in terms of distress and things like that.
Because it is. I said it when we got to the China story, but this snowball is getting big.
Yeah, exactly.
Israel accuses Iran of Cyprus attack plot after suspected arrest. The Iranian embassy in Nicosia says Israel is always making such a baseless allegation against Iran.
You want my opinion quickly? It's two liars pointing the finger at each other.
Yeah, absolutely what I was going to say. Because the news cycle will be Iran pointing at Israel one day, Israel pointing at Iran the next, and both are as sure that they're the right ones.
It's not, yeah, in my opinion, and I quote here before I give my opinion, sorry, this was a terrorist incident directed by Iran against Israeli business people living in Cyprus. Matan Sidi, spokesman for Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, said in a statement on Monday. End quote. In my opinion, look, it's just like when they dropped that when they took out General Soleimani with that drone strike, deny. Then all of a sudden, about a month ago, yeah, no, it was us. Now, I'm not saying in this case that Israel's lying, nor am I saying Iran is lying. Again, we take a look at the fact that, again, it's very difficult. Iran is not allowing UN inspectors to come see their nuclear arsenal, if you want to call it, their enrichment of uranium and things like this. I believe they've had nukes.
I believe not an article we're covering, but they literally have. Iran has tried to set the discourse to renegotiate any nuclear deal with the Western world, and they want to control the terms. The Western world said today, France specifically, I think, that Iran doesn't get to do that. So I don't know. Right. Everyone's butting heads.
They want to control the narrative, but again, it seems like there's some type of faction for faction play, if you will. But even if there wasn't all this crap going on around the world, I would still say, again, Israel and Iran pointing the finger at each other, nothing new.
I mean, yeah, same thing as Nuremberg trial. News cycles on something else.
Right.
Go ahead.
Sure, thank you. The next thing is that according to Al Jazeera, the court allows Judge Batar to resume Beirut blast investigation. An appeals court has rejected a request by former ministers to remove Judge Batar from the investigation. Look, like I've always said, personally, it was a very unfortunate thing. The only people that suffered very sadly were the ones that were caught in that blast. And if the people want a legitimate investigation done, I know Lebanon is quite, again, very sadly, quite controversial for some of the corruptions and affairs going on there. But at least if they can get as close to an unbiased review as possible, let them do it. And even if it's not, again, if there's enough people saying they want to do it, let them do it. You know, the people are speaking.
Right. I mean, but the question then becomes, who do you call in? I don't know that we trust white hats to do that correctly. Right. I don't know that we trust NATO. I don't know that we trust Israel, the closest person to Lebanon, maybe, that's got a good intelligence service. I just don't know who would do that in the interest of Lebanon and not themselves.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Next two stories, a little bit fun, I will say. Happy slapping Tajik blogger says sorry after raunchy snaps with a blonde policewoman outside Moscow. Cathedral outrages Russians. This man got deported for those two pictures. That is hilarious. I mean, sad. I'm sorry for him, but like, you shouldn't run up and hit police on the head and things like that earlier.
If we scroll down, it says Bobiev, I think that's how his name is pronounced, who has previously filmed clips of himself punching an unsuspecting man in the back of the head and running into trouble with police on the Moscow metro, was detained on Thursday following the incident. Investigators said he had fallen foul of laws around causing offense to the public and committing acts deliberately designed to sow religious division, end quote. One last thing. It says a Russian mixed martial arts fighter, Maxim Divnich, was among those who slammed the stunt. For starters, this is disrespecting the people, faith, and culture of the country he's come to. Secondly, it's specifically disrespectful to law enforcement officers, and animal in pursuit of popularity, end quote. Okay. Very quickly, my take on this, it's I'm not trying to brush it off as simply, it's Russia, it's Putin's Russia, it's the way. I can see why they want to nip this in the butt, because they don't want to see what's happening culturally in the US happen there. I get that part, but exactly to deport the point, right, to deport the guy, I don't know. What do you think, Camden?
I mean, he was this was maybe not an act against someone else. She's obviously made the decision to be a part of this post, right? But hitting an unsuspecting man in the back of the head, I mean, those are technically infringing on others' like personal space. So I mean, that could cause concern to be detained, I guess, at least sort of consequences. But yeah, if he's not doing anything insane, if he's not like harming and killing and maiming and tax frauding the country, I don't know deportation is necessary, because I mean, I don't know, Russia's humor might be different. It's just funny, really, to me. Like, that's like, I can't believe he had the audacity, I guess, to post that. Really.
I think it's a unknown, unwritten rule, excuse me, that you just don't do those kind of things especially in Russia. Now, again, I say this
square.
Right. We can also, play devil's advocate. Someone mentioned in the comments last week or the week before, they say, Dave, how come certain countries you say the people have to stand up, and then in other cases like Russia, you say, well, it's just the way it is. I couldn't agree more. And I say that because I don't encourage, very sadly, a lot of the people to come together unless it is on a guaranteed multi-million mass scale, especially in a country like Russia, because if you've seen what the Russian police have done to regular people, to suppress, protests getting larger.
Yeah.
It's bad. It's bad.
I mean, this next one is just as fun. Shout out to alma mater. Worker at the Wendy's on LSU campus arrested after allegedly pulling gun on a customer. I guess he told him the Frosty machine was broken and he didn't listen. And my man here had to pull out the gat.
He pulled out
So it's funny. It's dumb of him to do. He was on a college campus that is, even if you're at a Wendy's, it probably is, but a college campus is definitely a no firearm zone. Decisions and actions like these give them justification and reason to take our arms away, to deal with the Second Amendment the way they are trying to. And that's just, you have to say, like, come on, guys, let's not give them reasons. But that is pretty fucking funny. Anyways.
I couldn't agree more. I think that ultimately, I mean, these incidences happen all the time, but again, there's glorification of certain ones in particular to justify an agenda and a narrative rather than just being put out there for the sake of reporting, which is unfortunate, right? But we know the reality of things. So anything else you wanted to throw in, Camden, or that's about it?
I think that's a good news coverage of the day.
Yeah. With that being said, everybody, members will be getting an early release episode and a members episode over the next 24 hours. And we have a lot of things coming for both the members and the public very, very soon. With that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, everybody, and we'll catch you very soon. Cheers.